Hi. A question we often hear from consultants and certifiers is, what are the main things to check when auditing a site? While it's hard to offer a complete list, we decided to put together some information on some important features to check, as well as often forgotten items that shouldn't be missed. Please note that this is not an exhaustive list, and you should familiarize yourself with all the relevant standards that apply to each job. Part 1. Detection. First and foremost, ensure that baseline data is available on site. This is particularly important and unfortunately not always provided. This documentation should also include as-built drawings that you can use to quickly identify possible issues with the installation. See AS 1670 Part 1, Clause 1 Part 7 Part 2 for a full list of what information should be included in the baseline data. You also want the installer to confirm that the panel's power supply fail signal been configured to a separate channel on the ASE, or been otherwise externally monitored. You should ask for it to be demonstrated. When on site, you might want to head to the panel first. Is it installed in the correct location? Also, please ensure that, if the panel is behind a door, the correct signage should be provided to inform you of the location of the panel. Furthermore, does the fire panel have sufficient clearance around it? It should have 1 meter in front and half a meter on either side. Alternatively, the front door should be able to swing at least 135 degrees. Is there a block plan next to the fire panel? Check that it's correctly oriented, and it includes all the information as per Clause 3.10 of 1670 Part 1. If you have an EWIS panel, you also need to comply with Clause 3 Part 3 Part 5 of 1670 Part 4. Finally, if your system is compliant to 7240 Part 13, which is now a mandatory reference in Amendment 1 and is required in all systems from the 2022 Construction Code, the panel might have a diagnostic section to ensure the loop capacity has not been exceeded. In the case of the Fusion panel, you can ask the contractor to show you that this feature is enabled in the panel and what the loop capacity is. It should be below 100%. We recommend it to be around 80% for new installations to allow for future expansion. We often come across systems installed with maxed out loops that don't function correctly, and it's important to get this right from the start. Moving on from the panel, you want to check that the detectors correctly spaced as per Australian Standard 1670. If they are required in concealed spaces, please ensure they have been installed and noted in the drawings. You also want to ensure that they have been correctly selected for the area of installation. We often see smoke detectors in external areas. These are prone to dust and insect contamination, which might result in nuisance alarms. Alternatively, we see thermal detectors being used in these areas. Unfortunately, the moisture from the outside air might corrode the thermistor and put the system into alarm over time. As a solution, we therefore recommend using weatherproof, sealed thermal detectors in external areas. These are specifically designed to withstand moisture and do not react to fine particulate. If the site requires a smoke management system, please ensure you have the required smoke detectors in the relevant areas as listed in Section 7 of 1670. This includes, for example, circulation spaces in car parks, in front of lift doors and doors serving emergency stairs. If you have a lift on site, please ensure that there is a detector on top of each lift shaft and that this detector is both testable and serviceable without entering the shaft. Two simple ways to achieve this is either to use an aspirating smoke detection system, such as Wagner, or to have a detector mounted on a pole you can extract. If any access panel is cut into the masonry to achieve this, please ensure that the fire rating is maintained and that the panel can't be left in the open position. Furthermore, if you have jet fans on the site, please remember that the use of aspirating smoke detection is mandatory to service the area in front of it. Please ensure this system is designed and installed as per the manufacturer's specifications and that it's not installed inside the duct. At this point, you may want to test a few detectors to confirm they work correctly. If the site has mechanical air handling, please ensure the fan matrix has been programmed as desired and that it works correctly. You want to ensure that the relevant detectors and probes trigger the right fans as required. Now, let's discuss a very important point that is often forgotten: short-circuit isolators, which are now called transmission path isolators. Please ensure the contractor has installed them where required. These should be noted on the as-built drawings. The topic of where they should be located and all the possible exclusions is outside the scope of this presentation, and you should consult 1670 Part 1 for more details. In general, you should have them in between detection zones. They can also be used for spurs as long as each spur doesn't cater for more than a single detection zone, or, if you have sounder bases and detectors on the same cable, every 40 devices. We have heard from contractors that some brands can't support more than a certain number of isolators on the loop, and that some isolators are very expensively priced. Fusion Fire can support an isolator in each device, and their cost is so competitive that many installers only order detectors with isolators. This makes fault finding much easier and faster. It's also important to check that the installer has used fire-rated cable where required. Some of the most obvious places to check are items used for smoke management, including fan modules as per 1668 and detectors as per 1670 Part 1 Section 7. If you have an EWI system, you should also have fire-rated cable to the first speaker in each zone. Finally, if you have multiple panels and they are networked, are they wired in a loop configuration so that, in case of a break in the wire, you have a redundant path for the signal? To sum up, you should remember to check that the baseline data is present, that the panel has been installed correctly and that the capacity of each loop has not been exceeded, that there's a block plan and it includes all the right information, that the detectors are correctly spaced and are the right type for each area, that short-circuit isolators have been installed in the right spots, that fire-rated cable has been used where required, that the network infrastructure is correct. In the next videos, we will go through some of the features to check for occupant warning systems and EWIs. You can find more information on Australian Standard 1670 Part 1. Appendix A is also quite useful as it provides some guidelines on commissioning.